We want to be something other than appendages to society. We want to be co-equals and helpmeets of man in all his interests, perils, enjoyments of human life. We want that woman should be able to achieve her true nature and womanhood. And we want that when she dies, it may not say on her gravestone that she was a relic of somebody else. Now, when I delivered these words at this convention that she referred to, there was dead silence, except from the press. The first journal I read said it was a hen convention. They said that when a hen crows like a cock, it's time to cut her head off. Then another paper said it was a delegation of mongrels, pitiful, cock-brained, whatever else. It was terrible. But only one, and then it was also said that we should have mercy upon these miserable souls, meaning the women who were the delegates. But one man spoke in my favor, and that was Horace Greeley. And that so impressed Susan B. Anthony that she became an activist as well. But let me tell you how this all began. I was born in a family of 9 children. My father was a hard-drinking, bad-tempered, tight-fisted bastard, actually. And my mother had to flinch coins from his purse when he was sleeping, even though all 9 of us, including my mother, would be 10, worked to help support the family. By the time I was 18, I decided no man would control my life, and I would fight for women's rights. And I wanted to be a speaker on a public forum. Now, in those days, women were not allowed to speak, period. So I saved my money after teaching for a while and doing part-time jobs to go to college. I went to Oberlin College in Ohio because they let women in there, for one thing. And the first African-American was allowed to go there. Now, I wanted to study public speaking. So another woman and I joined this class. Now, after days of migraines, listening to the men talk, and us not be able to say anything, we get kind of frustrated. So we went to the professor and said, we want to debate. And he said, well, it's against school policy, but I'll let you debate each other. But be prepared for an uproar. Well, there was one. The Faculty Wives Board announced that this was against the Bible. That women were to study in silence and be submissive. So obviously we didn't agree with that. And I studied enough Hebrew and Greek that I could translate the Bible myself. And as far as I was concerned, the Bible was friendly to women, not opposed to us. So then I was voted to write a commencement speech. But when I asked to read it, I was told I couldn't do that. A professor would do it. So I told him to, take their offer and whatever. That was the end of that. But I still graduated with honors. And I went back to Massachusetts as the first woman with a degree in the state of Massachusetts. Wow. Now, my parents were proud of me, but they thought I'd just go back to teaching. But my intention was to be a public speaker for women's rights. So while I was paying off some more school loans, I waited to be asked to do public speaking. Well, a man named Lloyd Garrison was an abolitionist, and he hired me to give talks. He didn't know that I planned to add women's rights to this. So when I first gave my talks, my posters were torn down off the buildings. People sprinkled pepper all over the floor in the lecture hall. People threw rotten fruit at me. Even hymnals, the religious issue. and then ice water in the winter. Now, at this point, Mr. Garrison decided that he didn't want me talking about women's rights. And I said, fine, if I can't talk about that, I won't work for you. I was a woman before I was an abolitionist. So he said, okay, if you'll talk on just weekends. So I talked for him on weekends, and I spoke for human rights during the week. Now, believe it or not, I was earning $1,000 a week.
Wow.
Because I spoke at 9 women's conventions. I traveled around the North and the South. And I continued that for 10 years. And then I met a man who didn't hold these point of views. His name was Harry Blackwell. After hearing about my views and listening to me, we met. An hour later, he asked me to marry him. Now, I said no because I wasn't going to marry anybody. Remember, I wasn't going to be an influential man. So after 2 years of him setting appointments for me to speak and all, he finally said, we'll make up this marriage protest. At that time, a woman was owned by her husband, and the children were owned by him, guardianship and all that. She had nothing. So he wrote this up, and this was posted, and we got married. So we continued to work together. And then in 1863, I worked for the emancipation for Amendment 13. And then in 1896, I worked for the first women's suffrage group. And then in 1893, I gave my last address. It was 500 women from 27 countries. This is a World Association of Women. I gave 81 talks in 7 days. 6 months later, I left this world very proud of what I had contributed to. Madam Toastmaster.
That's amazing. Take your time. Lee Cambique, ladies and gentlemen.